Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and warm welcome to this online event on war in Ukraine and the new security landscape. Can I ask everyone to close your mics? I have many people on the online, so make it a bit more calm. Thank you. I want to take this chance to especially thank our esteemed speakers for taking the time to share their insights with us. This event is jointly organized by the Elisabeth Bank of Ideas and the E2 Research. My name is Mari Kooniemi and I'm a research director of the E2 Research. In these deeply worrying times, it feels extremely important to come together with friends, colleagues and collaborators, and to develop a deeper understanding of the current situation and its longer-term consequences for Ukraine, the Baltic and Nordic countries, and beyond. The question we all are asking is, what more could we do to support Ukraine and its citizens? In the E2 Research, our work is in many ways linked with comprehensive security. Themes such as local and global food system vulnerabilities, including on how climate change affects them, as well as societal justice, diversity and inclusion, are in the core of our research agenda. The more just our societies are, the more united we stand. We are delighted to start our collaboration with our fine colleagues in the Rehn Bank of Ideas by organizing this event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mari. And dear distinguished experts, dear friends, I also warmly welcome you to this event on behalf of me and Rehn Bank of Ideas. I am Kaisa-Maria Tölli, a founding member and also chair of this non-profit think tank, which is continuing the work of Minister Elisabeth Rehn, who is, I think, on the line too today. She's the world's first woman defense minister, former UN Under-Secretary General, and one of the best-known peace mediators in Finland. The Bank of Ideas is focusing on promoting comprehensive security and peace building, and this event will kick off a joint research project with the E2 Research on strengthening cooperation between the Nordics and the Baltics in security, preparedness and resilience. However, today our hearts and thoughts are in Ukraine. The idea for this event originated from the sympathy and pain we feel for Ukraine. And I hope that in this event we will find some answers to what we as Nordic and Baltic states can do more to support Ukraine and how we can improve our common security. But now I'm happy to give the floor to the Vice Chair of Bank of Ideas, Anna Terva-Hartiala, who is a moderator of this event. Thank you so much, Anna, for your strong contribution for this event.
With pleasure. Thank you, colleagues Kaisa, and thank you also Mari for the warm introductions. Also from my behalf, a warm welcome to all of you participants, and especially a warm welcome to our esteemed guests who are giving their time when this time is definitely needed in other venues as well. So just before we start the inputs, or before we give the mic to our esteemed guests, a small note on house rules. You're more than welcome to comment and share your thoughts in the chat box. And we will first give the mics to the speakers, then have a small question and answer round with each speaker after their inputs, and then also open the floor for general Q&A and comments and discussions and so forth. So comments in the chat box, and we will be following them as well as we can. And unfortunately, it seems that Mr. Myroshnychenko is not on the line yet. We will definitely try to solve it in the next few minutes, and we're trying various channels and various medias to get him on board. Having said this, I would propose that Dr. Smith from the the Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats starts the session, and then unless we have our friend from Ukraine online, we will move directly to Madam President Kaljulaid. But let's hope that we fix the small issue and we have Mr. Myroshnychenko on board in a matter of minutes. But without further ado, Dr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invite for this important event. I am sitting now in Helsinki. The sun is shining, but there is a serious war shadow in Europe currently. I had been given some perhaps questions to be asked to look at the situation specifically, I suppose, from the hybrid threat perspective. How did this happen if we knew that there is a hybrid threat activity going on in Ukraine? Ukraine is in fact the first case study, one could say, where hybrid threat activity which comes into our internal space. First, it is quite legal. It is almost happening in front of our eyes, the activity in different fields, turns little by little into a hostile activity, undermining both democratic systems and those countries, especially which are in democratization process. This is what happened in Ukraine. So little by little, Russia was able to increase and escalate its activities, even coming to warfare tools, one could argue, with annexation of Crimea and the war in Donbass in 2014 and 2015. And then after that continued to keep the conflict ongoing, the war factor a part of the situation. But once it seems so that even if Ukraine was not able to fully counter the hybrid threat activity and the harm it was doing, it was able to deny Russia what it wanted. And this is what basically in the worst case scenario, this type of a hybrid threat activity can result to the real war, crossing the threshold from hybrid threat landscape into a war. Why did we miss the signs, one could say, since we are quite aware of the fact that this activity was happening? One of the reasons perhaps one could say that this is due to the fact that nobody really believed that this way it would happen. We were expecting some type of a solution for the conflict, perhaps using even the military mean in the eastern Ukraine, but not the way how this happened. From the Finnish perspective, the situation is quite intriguing in the way that now we are in a situation where the whole European security landscape has changed. Russia, as a country, we knew it almost, has changed because the way how this regime now approaches the war is clearly also something that one could argue that is a change, big change. There is nothing good that can come out of it. A change will happen. And how can we perhaps prepare for what is coming? And are we going to face even more of the hybrid threat activity? Now it's good to remember that the hybrid threat activity is a support mechanism for a policy that does not work otherwise. And once there is a war going on, it is war, not anymore on hybrid threat activity. Currently, Russia is very active, engaged in the war activity in Ukraine. It's also very engaged on trying to counter the effects on sanctions, and it's very engaged on countering any internal opposition that happens in Russia. Russia is turning into a totalitarian country. So while this is happening, we are not necessarily seeing so much of the hybrid threat activity. However, we cannot disclose the fact that this can come, and specifically if NATO membership starts to materialize for Finland and Sweden, there are measures that can be expected that Russia takes into use. Russian strategic interest is to seek to get a new Iron Curtain to fall on Europe, and that would put a stop on any enlargement processes. For this, it seems so that it's ready to go quite far. Whether NATO deterrent on its own is enough to stop the activity or not, I would actually say that this is a question mark. It seems so, but we cannot count on this fact. And that means that we really need to build up on the feeling of the solidarity, the understanding of the nature of the threat, what is now present in Europe, and the fact that Russia has changed quite significantly. So currently, hybrid threat activity less. We cannot exclude that it will start again, but the factor remains that we have a Russia that is going to challenge the whole European security architecture and is seeking something new in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanna. Now that we missed Vasyl's introduction and kind of like a softer landing on the topic, would you also be able to slightly elaborate on from how you saw it? You follow hybrid threat activities in Finland, in Europe. Most definitely you have also had your eye on Ukraine for quite a while now. Could you please elaborate on, did this come as a surprise for you? What are some of the signs that were already there that we actually should have been keeping an eye on, and what are the signs that we should now be keeping an eye on as we move forward, or as the situation develops and the security landscape of Europe, of the world, of Ukraine has changed so significantly?
Well, you did not start with the very easy question, in fact, because hybrid threat activity is designed to be very difficult to detect, very difficult to see what the intent behind it is, and who in fact is the actor, at least in the early stages. What more the activity escalates, the more we can see perhaps the actor and start understanding that this activity might turn into a threat. But what exactly are the signs is that now it is going into a kind of wrong mode and the escalation is happening. That's the only thing that is that we're seeing actually the activity to intensify. We are seeing it more and violence coming perhaps into the picture. And that's why we should not wait until we are seeing these signs. We should understand, in fact, in a very early stages, that different aspects that are legal activity in a democratic states can be turned as a threat, and design perhaps our resilience measures against the hybrid threats in the way that it is already very difficult in the very early stages, when they are not kind of looking like a threat, already kind of position in the way that we can prepare and quite quickly shut down certain things or respond to information aspects, think about the cyber infrastructure aspect, societal coherence, cultural things which are all related to the landscape of hybrid threats. So this is the way how we can prepare very early stages, because once we start detecting, in fact, then situation starts to be much worse.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I now just, for all our participants, so that you know, Vasyl has joined us from Ukraine, but he's here with me on WhatsApp. So let's see if this quite ad hoc, quite patchwork shoestring system works. But before we move to him, and seems like he also dropped from my call, I just wanted to continue slightly with your inputs, Dr. Smith, and inquire a bit regarding there's a lot of Finnish people on the line, And in Finland, the discussion whether to join NATO, whether to not join NATO is hotter than ever, if one could say so. And according to the most recent polls, more than 60% are in favor of kicking off the one could say joining procedure, and even closer to 80% in case Sweden was also to join. One of the topics then circulating in the Finnish media and the Finnish discussions is how Russia would react to this, be it very direct military attacks or onslaught, or then something more hybrid and more covert. What are your regards on how Finland should prepare, and how this should or could, or whether it should at all affect the discussion Finland is having about the NATO process?
Well, first of all, I don't think that it should affect in any kind of a way our process and our discussions. It is true that Russia has expressed many times that in case Finland and Sweden are thinking about joining NATO or going or will join NATO, there will be then both political and military consequences on this. But this should not affect the decision-making process we have at all. What we need to prepare, and it's already visible relating to the sanctions and things, it will hurt our economy. It will most likely have some type of consequences on when it comes to reliability of services, for example. As such, Finland and even Sweden are today much better prepared relating to the information influencing than ever before. And Russia's ability now, when it is in a war mode and in a propaganda mode, and also trying to control its internal space, it is more limited than it has been. So in case the process goes relatively quickly, inside of the time when Russia still is in a war in Ukraine, then perhaps the activity is not going to be that much. If we wait for a year and Russia wins this war, then the situation will be much more serious.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. If I am not mistaken, we have Mr. Myroshnychenko online. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Hi, Anna. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you very well. I hope that all our other participants can hear you as well. And I will also. We had a bit of a backup line with Vasyl here on WhatsApp, and seems like we can drop that. So that is good news. As long as the technology allows, the floor is yours. We are very, very happy to have you here. And just for our dear audience, again, apologies for the technical issues. I'm sure you understand that we're living in very exceptional circumstances. Mr. Myroshnychenko, no less so. So I will be happy now to give the floor to the advisor of the Minister of Defense of Ukraine and co-founder of the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, Mr. Myroshnychenko, and apologies for the definite mispronunciation of your last name.
Yeah, no problem. I think you were very good. I'm also, I don't know if you can also turn on my video if it's possible, or you can see me, because I cannot see myself. I'm not sure if you can see me. But I'm happy to start with some of the opening remarks, which I wanted to do at the very beginning, and I will just carry on. And I hope you can listen to me. Look, so what's going on in Ukraine right now? I'm sure you're watching all the news, and you are seeing all the atrocities which are now taking place in Ukraine, and how much damage Russia is inflicting upon Ukraine. In the last 3 weeks, Ukraine was able to destroy the myth of the powerful Russian armed forces. The Russian campaign was built on an assumption that they can take over Kiev in 3 days. They have that assumption did not work out. It was a major miscalculation on their part. Ukraine was able to fend off the attack, and keeps on fighting. Of course, we're now seeing the largest war in the middle of Europe since the Second World War in terms of the number of troops deployed in Ukraine, as well as in terms of the equipment which is being deployed. As we were able to stop Russian troops in different parts and in different parts of the country, we have now moved to a different stage in this war. So we are now discussing resilience of Ukraine long term and what could be done to help Ukraine now. So there are many there are different issues which are now at stake and which are very important. We definitely need support from our countries which are supporting Ukraine right now. We need military support, we need financial aid, we need humanitarian assistance. We definitely, as you can see, the level of the negative implications because of the war are so many. First of all, there are over 3 million Ukrainians already in the EU, and the numbers are rising. So if Ukraine falls, the number of refugees we're going to see in Europe will probably be over 10 million, or maybe even more. The population of Ukraine is 42 million people, and if it continues like that, the refugees numbers will increase. We see some major serious implications for the food security and for the global food security. As you know, Ukraine is one of the largest exporters of wheat, vegetable oils, and animal feed. Many countries in the Middle East and Africa depend on our products. Right now, because of the blockade of the Black Sea ports, we cannot export the wheat we now have in grain storage facilities, and apparently, and also the harvesting season in Ukraine is now undermined for this year. So we don't know how it's going to develop and what's going to be the yields in this circumstances. So why Ukraine has managed to be so resilient? I mean, this is one of the questions we are discussing here. Well, one of the reasons is that this war has been going on already for 8 years. So Ukrainians have been able to go through many different stages, right? We already had our military, which was in combat, which had the necessary experience. Of course, all the civil society got organized. As a result of the Revolution of Dignity in 2014, many new NGOs kind of popped up, including Ukraine Crisis Media Center as an example, which was a media NGO which was out there supporting the armed forces, supporting different government departments, and helping communicate better. So it all kind of created an ecosystem which contributes to better resilience and to more civil defense. Also, we Ukrainians, my friend today, by the way, made a very good metaphor. He compared Ukraine now to a beehive. So if you look at the beehive, these are all the bees there. There is kind of a horizontal organization that they kind of know what to do and learn it, and we don't yet know how they do it. But once they are under threat, they get united. So when the bear comes and the bear wants to destroy the beehive, all the bees are ready to sting, and when they sting, they die. So there is a high level of self-sacrifice and also quick mobilization and ability to build horizontal structures. And I think this is what we see in Ukraine, because the level of total resistance that Russians are seeing in Ukraine is something they never expected, because people just got united, Russian-speaking, Ukrainian-speaking, Orthodox Catholics, Muslims, and Jews, in a total resistance to this Russian invasion. You must have seen the pictures of tractors towing and stealing Russian tanks. I've seen videos and video footage of people driving a regular car and throwing a Molotov cocktail at a Russian armored personnel vehicle. People are kind of defiant, they are fearless, and they are fighting. The number of people who sign up to territorial defense is pretty big. Also, of course, we'll discuss it later, and it's more of a discussion, but I also want to mention that Ukraine has been able to use all the social media pretty well, and we can all, of course, delve deeper into that. But the response and the coalition that we've been able to build including Finland, of course, which you were very supportive, was very strong coalition of the Western world, all united in isolating Russia, in imposing sanctions, in calling for the tech companies globally to cut off Russia from their services. And you've seen those campaigns on TikTok, on Twitter, and in all other social media. So Western companies which are operating in Russia, not all of them, but many of them have even voluntarily ceased their operation there. And that has been as a result of this pressure that we've been able to build from the grassroots level, but also with the support of other friends from abroad. Look, what we need right now, Finland as an EU member state, we really need support to be able to withstand it, to be able to defend freedom and democracy, all those values which are so precious to the people in Europe. We're there supporting it. We need a land-lease program to be able to sustain further. We need to be talking about a new Marshall Plan for Ukraine. That's also, of course, for the future to rebuild the country. But we also need a clear signal from the EU that Ukraine should become a candidate EU member state. It's crucial for our motivation to keep on fighting, and we hope we can get that signal pretty soon. I mean, I think that's it for my opening remarks, and I'll just stop here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Myroshnychenko. You should be able to turn on your camera now, so that lovely that our participants also get a face to the voice. A question before we move on to Madam President. Just in a few minutes, I know this is again a big question, but knowing that you are one of the co-founders of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, and you mentioned all the various social media channels or media channels in general, and in a reference to a discussion we had before we had this call, you said that the war is a war on the hearts and minds of the Ukrainians. It is not only a war about the sovereignty and territory of Ukraine, it is very much something beyond. Could you please maybe elaborate a bit on what has been a key factor in building the resilience in the hearts and the minds? On the other hand, what have also been the means and methods of warfare of Russia in regards to the hearts and minds? And just before you start, if you can keep it in a few minutes so that we stay in the agenda, no pressure.
Yeah, I'll just make it very brief. You know what? It's very simple. Basically, the cities which are now under major attack, they include Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Mariupol, Kherson as well. These are the most Russian-speaking cities in Ukraine. Probably these are the cities where the pro-Russian sentiment was probably the highest. I mean, I would say that before this second Russian-Ukrainian war, the pro-Russian sentiment there could have been around 20%. But once Russians started sending their missiles and bombing those cities, I think all those people who had some kind of affection towards Russia, they totally lost it. So what happened that Russia will not be able to recover any kind of affection in any part of Ukraine for a very long period of time. I think we're talking about the generations, because the number of the casualties, the human suffering which is taking place there, like the city of Mariupol, which is 400,000 people there, is under siege. Russia is committing war crimes there. They even bombed the maternity house 2 days ago. A pregnant woman died with her unborn child. This is really horrendous what's going on. And the level of this suffering is something which, it totally killed any kind of pro-Russian sentiment. And that's going to be for a long time. So this just, basically that attack that Putin has waged on Ukraine, mobilized the people, and sort of got us all united around fighting one enemy, and that's it.
All right, a very known tactic that a common enemy joins forces beyond lines of friendship even sometimes. Thank you so much, Mr. Myroshnychenko, and we will come back to these themes towards the end. Now it is with great pleasure that I hand over the mic to Madam President Kaljulaid. Are you there? Are you able to unmute yourself?
Hello, I'm here. I hope you see and hear me.
We do.
to listen to this discussion, and I'm very grateful for the insights from Ukraine, from Myroshnychenko, because I think the whole world, every time we start talking about Ukraine and its options and possibilities, should first remember these sites which we are daily now seeing from Ukraine. And the lesson for the future is very obvious for us. Whenever somebody starts to show signs that they are not respecting international law, they should be stopped there and then. I believe we missed our historic moment in 2008 after Georgian war. Because in 2007, Vladimir Putin said in UN Security Conference that he wants to rewrite the international security order and give more space to decide for those who have power. We didn't negotiate, but we didn't act when he acted in Georgia. And this is why we are sitting here at the end point. This is a lesson for the future. I don't like to cry over spilled milk. I don't like really to say, we told you so. But we have to understand also, each and every time from now on, the world has to be able to stop those who are leaving the international legal space to achieve their own objectives, disregarding Helsinki final acts, which are so dear to Finns, and which, well, were able to not to see their 50th anniversary without being so deeply violated. We should act and react sooner. But right now, I'm very grateful also for the world that we have got our act together. The free world is acting in unison. There is a two-track approach. One is military support for Ukraine, coming from the sources which 3 days before the war nobody expected could be coming. Notable change from German position. Obviously, German politicians for some time foresee the necessity for such a change, but they didn't have an argument for their people. The argument, unfortunately, was given. The change was immediate, rapid. We've also seen European Union, which, according to the treaty, cannot even support each other within the Union with our military expenditure. Now is helping Ukraine. This is an unprecedented step, and we didn't take long to reach this step. So there has been a lot of positive going on. And I'm also very happy that there has been a certain wording about offering Ukraine an emergency call to start the accession negotiations with the European Union. And indeed, I understand the difficulties, because normally you call somebody to start negotiating for joining our union only when Copenhagen criteria are all met. And Copenhagen criteria in the case of Ukraine were not met before the war, and obviously are less met right now because of the war. But I think we should not, get caught in this kind of legalistic discussion. Offering Ukraine, and maybe also, for example, Moldova, a clear opportunity to start these negotiations is demonstrating not only to Vladimir Putin and his gang, but also to ordinary Russian people, that if the objective really and truly were to kind of keep the Russian world together and expanding, even if I never understood why it should be done, on the expense of freedom and democracy, they would see that actually they are fast forwarding Ukrainian and other Eastern partners possibilities to come closer and join the European Union. If this is understood by simple people and also by the regime, I believe this is very important, because it also even further strengthens the morale of Ukrainian people. They are fighting for all of us, and this is the minimum we could do to them. Also, when we could now say already that Russia has lost this war, but Ukraine has not yet won this war. But we may be, as every day goes by, be more and more sure that Ukraine will survive this war. And then we should be there saying that, yes, we have taken a different approach in case of Ukraine, maybe also, for example, Moldova, maybe Georgia, and we do start negotiating for joining the European Union. And we do help first, these countries, to achieve full compliance with Copenhagen criteria. I remember we were offered strong EU support in the format of the FARE program. Ukraine could have a totally fresh start after the war. Indeed, we need Marshall Plan, we need a lot of resources, but I think there should also be given a clear perspective for Ukraine. It's extremely important, as I said, for morale and for showing the other side that you can never win by bullying other nations to stay away from partnerships and alliances which they want to achieve. That's my word of wisdom in this situation and my advice what we could do.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam President. Before we move on to the discussion on what to do and one could say how to move forward, I would just want to hear your reflections also kind of a bit in hindsight, knowing that Estonia is very strong in cybersecurity and also has voluntary national defense capabilities and defense capabilities and is NATO member. What are your thoughts regarding the beginning of this war? Did they come as a surprise? Did Europe let its guards down? What are some of the learnings we could derive from how it came to this?
Yes and no. I mean, it did come technically as a surprise because I believe we all, to a certain extent, are aware of the count of the military might of Ukraine and the military might of Russia gathered behind the Ukraine territories, and it was obvious that there is not enough resources to, start and win such an overwhelming war. The only explanation to this has to be that, well, how to say it? The Kremlin gang obviously thought that Ukrainian people do not really care under whose rule, Zelensky's or Putin's, they go and put the potatoes in the ground in the spring. They simply thought that Ukrainian people do not care as long as, let's say, the Maslow pyramid lower levels are covered. And this was why this war started. I am quite sure there cannot be no other explanation. And in the hindsight, because it was such a huge miscalculation, which stems, by the way, from this permanent misunderstanding between the West and Russia, which has been that Vladimir Putin has always accused Europe of enlarging its sphere of influence. In case of Belarus, for example, when people rose up because they didn't want Lukashenko to remain president when he obviously had not won the elections, then West was accused of enlarging its sphere of influence. And I believe truly Kremlin is unable to understand that, Belarusian people themselves want freedom, democracy, human rights, etc. The same applies for Ukrainian people, and they simply do not understand that. What could we have done differently? Well, I already said, I think we should have the sanctions of this level started in 2008, not 21. But let's not concentrate on that too much anymore.
No, definitely. It's high time to look forward now. Regarding this and also your comments regarding the people and the miscalculations of what the people want or the disregard of, let's say, the people's sentiments. As preparing for this call, I read an opinion piece on the Washington Post, and there was a theory about what and who could topple Putin and his reign. And there was a list of 3 who could potentially do this. The first was the oligarchs, the second was the military, third was the ordinary Russians. What are your thoughts regarding this kind of listing, or to be a bit more specific, who and what is Putin afraid of at the moment, if anything?
I think we are very naive if we are going down this route, thinking that if we only found somebody around Putin who will inject poison into the boiled egg in the morning, that then we have solved the whole problem. This is a system. It's a system which is supported by, many people in Russia, including those who have a lot of money, which is supported by the regime, which is supported by police forces, special forces. It's a regime. It is not Putin. Let's be very clear about it. So there are no such simple solutions, which of course means then that it is only Russian people who can shift this whole situation in their home country. It is not just the country has fallen foul of 1 person or even 5 persons or 10 persons. It's bigger. It is a system. As we can see also from the opinion polls, we want to hear more the signals that many Russians are ashamed by this war, which is true. But I mean, the number of people who support what is going on because they're brainwashed is also not negligence, so it cannot be ignored as well. So I truly think that all this discussion is simplified, and we cannot count on that. We have to count on our ability to, I mean, keep supporting Ukraine, find a moment when it is the best for Ukraine to go to peace discussions, allow Ukraine to decide on which conditions they are ready to sign, and from then on take it from there and try to kind of help those people in Europe who want to be part of the free world, not only Ukraine, but looking also at the other Eastern partners. Forget about easy solutions, they are not there.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Madam President, with this, I open the floor to a general discussion and Q&A. So as said, feel welcome to pose your thoughts and discussions, questions in the chat. Now, going back to Dr. Smith, you have heard Madam President, Mr. Myroshnychenko speak. A question I have here, in light of what you do, your expertise of hybrid threat activities, how has the definition of defense and also the priorities of defense and resilience changed, in your opinion, if somehow?
Quite difficult question what you put there. I think that nothing has changed as such in that. The only thing what has changed now is that we have understood that on top of the fact that we need to be able to counter and to be resilient against the hybrid threat activity, we also need to remember the conventional military aspect and to be able to have that part very active and capable as well. And I think this has been perhaps the little bit of a problem in the European side, also when it relates to this hybrid threat discussion, in the way that we have perhaps thought, okay, we have this slightly new, in the way that old mechanisms, but in our time, the combination is a little bit new in Europe, so that's a security threat that it's coming, but we've kind of forgotten that always still keep the conventional military power in place, I would say, or military capabilities in place. This is something that everybody has now kind of woken up to. And I think if I still may about this, I liked very much on the answer relating to Putin's war or Russia's war. I have got this question sometime also, and I think this is also, we need to be crystal clear. We are not talking about Second World War and the Nazi Germany as a Hitler's war in that way, or that, you know, to looking at it in those kind of terms. Obviously, we need a totalitarian leader that has a brutal approach to international politics to start something like this, but he has a system behind it. There is a country behind it. And this we need to know. We have to hope that there is enough people in the country in the end that rises against the system. But as this is a Russia's war and nothing else, and comparable to the Second World War.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Mr. Myroshnychenko, I see you nodding as you listen to the speakers. A question I would have you regarding this is very much, would be lovely to hear what you think of what has been said so far. In addition to this, what you have seen in the past few weeks, what are your recommendations to, let's say, Finland, a country that is not part of NATO but has a very long border with Russia, for example. On the other hand, to Estonia, a member state. Any recommendations, reflections on that regard?
Thanks, and I don't think I'm in a position to provide any recommendations, but in this stage, but you are seeing what's happening, and definitely military capabilities are very important that the countries have to maintain and preserve. Of course, there is a debate in Finland: should you join NATO? Should you not? It's of course will be up to the people of Finland to decide if you what you want to do. But apparently, what as President Kaljulaid said, we kind of missed the opportunity to actually punish Putin, and that was a very strong signal which he made in 2014 when he took over Crimea, when he manufactured and started the war in the eastern part of Ukraine. There is the sanctions which were imposed, they were too hollow, they were too weak, and he took it as an encouragement. He believes that democracies are weak and he wants to take over the democracies, and that's his fight against the free world. And as you remember, Medvedev at the meeting of this Security Council said, look, yeah, we've seen those sanctions, but they were lifted eventually. You still need to do business, you still need to buy gas and oil and etc. So I think this time we cannot miss the opportunity, because maybe Russia is already losing just because they are losing but we still have to win. And we don't know how long we can last. And this is very important to support Ukraine with everything you have. I mean, and this is an address to all the European Union countries, to NATO member states, because I don't think Putin will stop there. It's a war where he wants to test NATO, and he will just pick a country where he wants to do it. Estonia, Poland, Romania, we don't know, right? But he sent missiles 2 days ago, which is 20 kilometers from the border with Poland. The likelihood that those missiles could have hit Poland were very high. That was this military training ground in the Yavoriv International Peace and Security Center, where 35 people were killed and another 140 were wounded. So it's actually the embargo which needs to be put on the Russian gas and oil and coal should be immediate, because this is where Russia will feel it very painful, and this is where pressure needs to be put on those European countries who depend on these resources, and that's very important. Yep, I think that's all for me.
Thank you. I will take a question from Mr. Pentikäinen from the chat, asking. Are you happy with what the UN is doing inside of Ukraine to help the people? And in addition, I would personally like to add to this what the UN is doing also in diplomatic means or on the diplomatic level. So firstly in Ukraine and or secondly on the international sphere. Well,
I've heard many complaints from my friends who are working for the government, who are especially working on the humanitarian assistance, that UN agencies have been able to get lots of money of support towards Ukraine. However, their opportunity to roll out the assistance has been very slow, for different reasons: bureaucracy, inefficiency, you name it. There are many different reasons for that. And that the same, by the way, was also addressed. I heard these complaints about International Red Cross organization, because they get all the money from all the donors, but when they were asked to go to Mariupol, to go to Kharkiv, they just refused to do that. I don't know for what reason, for security reasons, safety reasons, but this is where they were needed most, right? So apparently there is an issue with that. I know it's being sorted out as we speak, but we are still seeing a major crisis in Mariupol, in Sumy, in Kharkiv, where so many people are trapped. They are not getting any kind of assistance for different kind of reasons. In terms of the UN, it's a very complicated issue. A good thing is that we've got this resolution which recognizes Ukraine's aggression. 141 countries have supported that. Of course, that will be used for further prosecution of all those who committed those crimes in the future. But we should be talking about, of course, about the reform of the UN, and it's been ongoing for many years, right? It's a very long topic. But of course, we may question the seat of Russia on the permanent seat of the Security Council, because technically, once Soviet Union collapsed, there was no legal procedure and mechanism why Russia has actually taken over that seat. And that could be questioned from a legal standpoint of view. Maybe some international public lawyers could look into that, but maybe this could be overhauled and something can change.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Definitely, let's not open the Pandora box of the UN reform in this call, but another one. I would like to move to Madam President and ask you, slightly related to definitely related to the discussion in the sanctions, what could be done internationally in Ukraine and or in Russia. It's very much also a war of narratives, and knowing that the West is imposing extremely strong sanctions that should have been imposed years ago, but also that the narrative in Russia is very much that it is the West against Russia, that there is an attack from the West on Russia. How do we ensure as we go forward, especially when we apply, one could say, non-militarist, or we take non-military measures to try to make the war stop? Are there ways of ensuring that we do not actually feed the flames of the narrative of Putin, that this is two worlds fighting at each other's, or, yeah?
Well, I think we should think less about what Putin is using for his propaganda. I mean, a few obvious cafes about having a few discussions we should have had a week law, having it publicly. I mean, we could have indeed spared. But frankly speaking, I don't think we should really be dealing with what they think. How can they use this for their own propaganda? What concerns the sanctions, then I think we should constantly be looking what are the holes in the sanction systems, I mean, and keep plugging them, because obviously those countries who have a lot of Russian money, they must be seeing how this money is trying to wriggle out of the sanction regime, and we could make sure that we share information about all this with each other, and indeed keep plugging all these holes. I also believe that Europe should send a very clear and united signal that the long-term consequence of not being able to sell primary energy to Europe anymore, because we simply are taking today steps and inviting investments, which actually will be useless if we then turn back to the Russian primary energy sources, is a good thing to make sure that actually there is a clear understanding that these sanctions will persevere. I mean, simply economically, it will not be any more feasible for us to go back if we have made all the investments into LNG, into green turn and all this. And we should absolutely make sure that these sanctions cannot be, I mean, negotiated easily. Let's say that Russia comes out and says we are ready to now, I mean, call some kind of a peace, maybe recognizing that they have gained really little, try to fix what they have gained, and then, I mean, ask for us to roll back the sanctions. I think we should not bend, we should keep the sanctions in place, and we should not think that, I mean, Ukraine whole and free, not only free, I mean, is a goal which we finally have. We cannot claim victory unless we have achieved this, and the sanctions cannot be radically changed before we finally see that indeed Ukraine is not only free, but also whole. This is very important to keep our own thinking together on this. And another very important thing is that it has to be also Ukraine-led peace process, which I am quite worried sometimes is that, I mean, this is all very horrible, which is going on. And I feel that Russia is hurting the towns and killing civilians precisely to make us feel that it's also horrible, that we need to stop it at any cost. But it is for Ukrainian people to say, I mean, how long they are ready to keep fighting to make sure that this war is truly and clearly won by them. And we have to accept, respect, and keep also supporting with all the military equipment which we can give to Ukraine this war, which I'm very happy to see that also US has made new tranches of resources available and so on. We in Europe should do the same, I believe. This is extremely important, that there is absolutely no signal that we are tiring of supporting. We are impatient to resolve this crisis, because all kind of crises always uncomfortable. And even before it heated up, we very often heard this thinking that, well, I mean, we cannot remain in this kind of situation where, I mean, we have an antagonistic Russia, so let's do something quickly. But quickly would have been definitely wrong, because then we would have painted Kremlin's regime out of the corner, and they always think this is the weakness on our side, and it would have been a weakness on our side. Weakness, I mean, which stems from impatience. We need to have strategic patience, and we need to be led here also by Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Time is running faster than I would like it to, meaning that we have 3 minutes left. I will give all of you the chance to share some final thoughts. There's one question I find very interesting, which is how far or close are we from a scenario of the war expanding to other countries? So this is maybe a question you could reflect on as you share some closing remarks. Dr. Smith, I would start with you.
Yes, thank you very much. I will say a little bit about this sanction thing, because this fact that Putin is saying that it is a West who is putting the sanctions is only good. It is highlighting the fact that we are almost in a war with Russia. I mean, in economic terms, in that one, Ukraine in concrete terms. So in some ways, that actually helps for bringing the message. This is a conflict. This is a serious thing. Yes, say that it is us who are doing this. Eventually, they start questioning why West is doing this. So that's a good one. War expanding. There is a danger for that. I think it's a clear cut. In this one, if it isn't, then we have to thank Ukraine for putting a hard fight, because as long as Ukraine is fighting, Russia cannot expand the war. But it is still a possibility, specifically if Russia starts, of course, eventually losing what they can come up with to redirect and so on. So this is a serious one. We should not think that that it is only perhaps localized in the case of Ukraine. And finally, I will say about the holding together Russian society. For a while, perhaps yes, but this is also clear. What the timeline is, I cannot say, but I do think that this is the beginning of the end for the Russia also, as we have known, because if Russia now when it has taken the step to totalitarianism, there is only way, and that's a down eventually. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Mr. Myroshnychenko.
Of course, I would like to finish with some optimistic remarks. Unfortunately, I cannot do so in these circumstances. And look, what we need to be prepared for is something for a major catastrophe to happen. And there are kind of different ways of what can take place during the next several days. As you see, Russians cannot succeed on the ground, right? They keep on shelling civilians, and the reason they do it, they want to put more pressure on the Ukraine's leadership to force them to surrender, right, as President has rightly pointed out. And that's the reason why they're terrorizing the people, killing civilians just for no reason. And there are many cases of that already. They're already using cluster bombs. They are using thermobaric bombs, all banned by international convention. Now, as you know, 2 nuclear power plants are now taken over by the Russians, right? It's a nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia, which is the largest in Europe, has 6 reactors, and also Chernobyl, which is taken over by the Russians. Now, let's imagine one of the missiles which are being used hits one of those nuclear power stations. That's going to be already a catastrophe of a European size, right? It can make part of Europe unlivable, basically. So my response is very simple. We need some protection. We need this no-fly zone. We need to have the ability to protect the sky, because we are talking about the global security now, not only European security under these circumstances. Now, one more thing. Provided everything, as it goes, but Russia is losing lots of its manpower. I mean, we have an estimate, according to the Ukrainian reports, over 12,000 are dead, 35,000 are wounded. They didn't expect it, right? And because he's losing, they may use tactical nuclear weapons to just intimidate us further. And I don't rule it out. So now the West needs to be ready. If they do use those technical nuclear weapons, what's going to be the response? What NATO is going to say? That's very important, just to keep it in mind and already have a plan in place. Chemical weapons. Lavrov is talking about American biological and chemical laboratories in Ukraine. The only reason he's saying that is that most likely they plan to use chemical weapons, and they've done it in Syria. So what is the response of the West if they actually do use chemical weapons against the population? So I just want to leave you up with these thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Myroshnychenko. I'm aware that you need to hop off. We're already beyond the mark. But anyway, thank you for your presence, and thank you for all of you who have to go now. And if only there is a few minutes, Madam President, that you have to spare, it would be lovely to hear your closing remarks.
Well, Russia's been an empire in decline with bad demographics and horrible economy, and it knows it. So its window of opportunity is closing, and it's obvious that it's becoming reckless. So thinking the unthinkable is definitely something which globally, I'm sure everybody in all headquarters in NATO around NATO tables in United States and elsewhere is nowadays thinking. NATO's changing from deterrence to defense posture, etc. So we are clearly thinking of the unthinkable, and I am sure that we will be ready for whatever kind of scenarios there can be. And I mean, because this is not about rationale. This is not rational what is going on in Ukraine. I mean, launching such a catastrophe and committing such crimes. I mean, it's not in any way understandable, and that's why we have to say that the visibility at any given time is particularly bad, and think the unthinkable and be prepared.
Thank you all panelists. Thank you participants and also colleague organizers. This is where we stop. As Mr. Myroshnychenko said, I hope we could stop with more positive remarks, but I guess I speak on all of our behalf that we end with a feeling of solidarity, and we are here to help and support, and the communications lines are open. Thank you all, and I wish you a very good day and afternoon.
Thank you very much for your support. We really appreciate you rooting for us. And
stay safe in Ukraine.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thanks so much.